They were supposed to destroy it. Every bridge across the Rhine had been demolished on Hitler's direct order. The Rhine was Germany's last natural barrier, a 800-mile wall of water standing between the Allied armies and the heart of the Reich. By March 1945, every crossing had been blown. Every one. Except this one. On March 7, 1945, a young American lieutenant named Karl Timmermann looked through his field binoculars at the town of Remagen, Germany, and saw something that shouldn't have existed. The Ludendorff Bridge was still standing. The Ludendorff Bridge had been built during the First World War, a double-track railway bridge, 325 meters long, anchored by two stone towers on the eastern bank that looked more like a fortress than a train crossing. Its name came from General Erich Ludendorff, one of the architects of Germany's First World War strategy. The bridge had survived that war. It had survived 25 years of peace. And in the final weeks of World War II, it was the last thing standing between the Allied armies and the eastern bank of the Rhine. The men who reached it that afternoon belonged to the 9th Armored Division. They had been moving fast, the kind of fast that happens when an army senses a war ending. Their orders were straightforward: reach the Rhine, secure the western bank, wait for further instructions. Nobody had ordered them to cross it. Karl Timmermann was 22 years old. He had been born in Frankfurt, his father a German immigrant, his mother American. He had grown up in Nebraska, and now he was standing on a bluff above the Rhine, staring at a bridge that the entire German army was supposed to have destroyed, watching smoke pour from its towers. The Germans were clearly trying. They had set demolition charges. Something had gone wrong. His commanding officer, Brigadier General William Hoge, received the report and faced a decision that had no manual. Crossing the Rhine was not in the orders. Higher command hadn't authorized it. There were no boats. There were no engineers in position. There was no plan. There was only the bridge, and it was still there. Hoge made the call. Take it. He later described the moment simply. He said the opportunity was too great to ignore. That sentence does not capture what he was actually doing, authorizing a crossing of the Rhine River with whatever men he had on hand, on a bridge that might detonate at any moment, against an unknown defensive force, without orders from above. He told Timmermann to go. At approximately 3:15 in the afternoon on March 7, 1945, Karl Timmermann led his men onto the Ludendorff Bridge. The Germans fired everything they had: machine guns from the eastern towers, artillery from the surrounding hills. Timmermann's men crawled forward on the wooden planking, using the steel girders as cover, moving in short sprints from beam to beam. Halfway across, the bridge shuddered. A demolition charge detonated. Not the main charge, but enough to buckle the planking and throw men off their feet. Timmermann kept moving. His men reached the eastern bank. They were the first Allied soldiers to cross the Rhine in a combat operation since Napoleon's armies had done it 140 years before. It had taken them less than 30 minutes. The Germans had known the Americans were coming. They had watched the advance for days. The officer responsible for destroying the bridge was Captain Willy Bratje, commanding a small garrison force of roughly 36 combat soldiers. The rest were a patchwork of Volkssturm militia, Hitler Youth members, and wounded men from other units. The Wehrmacht had stripped Remagen of its defenders for other fronts. The demolition charges were in place. The plan existed, but the primary explosive, a large store of prepared charges, had never been delivered. The order had been given. The trucks had never arrived. When the detonation was finally attempted, the main charge fired only partially. The bridge cracked. It swayed. It did not fall. Bratje and his men fled across the bridge and triggered the secondary charges from the eastern side. The explosion damaged the structure further. Timmermann's men were already crossing before the smoke cleared. Within hours, Hitler had ordered an emergency response. Artillery, bombers, V-2 rockets, combat swimmers with explosives, and a temporary Luftwaffe assault, all directed at a single bridge. He also ordered the execution of the officers responsible for its loss. 4 German officers were tried by a military court. 3 were shot. The Americans held. For 9 days, the Remagen bridgehead was the most contested piece of ground in Europe. The Germans threw everything at it: artillery, bombing runs, fragmentary attacks, combat swimmers operating underwater with explosives. The Allies moved fast to consolidate. Engineers floated pontoon bridges alongside the Ludendorff to handle the traffic. Tens of thousands of men and hundreds of vehicles crossed the Rhine. Eisenhower called the bridge worth its weight in gold. He diverted 5 divisions to exploit the crossing, a decision that fundamentally altered the final campaign plan for ending the war. On March 17th, 10 days after Timmermann's men first crossed it, the Ludendorff Bridge finally collapsed. The damage from the partial demolitions, the ongoing German bombardment, and the stress of constant heavy traffic had taken their toll. 28 American engineers working on the bridge at the time of its collapse were killed. The bridge was gone. But it no longer mattered. The bridgehead was secured. The Rhine had been crossed in force. The road to the interior of Germany was open. Karl Timmermann received the Distinguished Service Cross. He was 22 years old. He came home after the war. He died in 1951, at 29, from cancer, likely connected to his wartime service. He is buried in his home state of Nebraska. The names of his men, the first soldiers to cross the Rhine under fire, are not widely known. They belong to a category of history that keeps getting compressed. The people who did the specific, irreplaceable thing that changed the outcome and then disappeared from the story. The crossing at Remagen did not end the war. Germany did not surrender because of a single bridge. But the bridgehead it created collapsed the last coherent German defensive line in the West. It forced the Wehrmacht to react to Allied momentum rather than dictate the terms of retreat. Historians estimate it shortened the war's end by weeks, possibly more. Weeks in the final months of that war meant lives, thousands of them. Today, the 2 stone towers still stand on the eastern bank of the Rhine at Remagen. The bridge itself is gone, collapsed, never rebuilt. The towers have been converted into a peace museum. Inside, you can read the names of the men who crossed. You can see the original demolition charges that failed to fire. You can stand in the same tower rooms where German soldiers watched the Americans come and knew, in those final moments, that they could not stop them. The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945, 52 days after Karl Timmermann looked through his binoculars and saw something that shouldn't have been there. He was 22 years old. He told his men to go. And they went. In our next episode, a woman who kept a secret for 30 years. Because the secret was a weapon, and the weapon was her mind.